Welcome in, everyone, and thank you for listening to the 124th ever episode of the Missouri Sports Podcast, brought to you by 106 Apparel and recording from the Revel Advertising Studio in beautiful Springfield, Missouri. I'm one of your hosts, Cameron Albert, alongside my good friend and fellow Mizzou fan, Kyle DeVries. How are you doing today, Kyle?
I'm great, Cameron. How are you?
I'm doing well. It's nice that they let you out of the penitentiary.
Well, it's actually my hunting attire.
Oh, okay.
And I'm hunting for a defensive coordinator.
Oh, wow.
Dang. Yeah.
Okay.
I was prepared for you to make fun of me.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
I could tell. That was prepared.
Yeah, for audio only, I'm wearing a very bright orange
neon, you might say,
hoodie. I bought it from Walmart for about $5.
Was that part of a Halloween costume?
Yes.
Absolutely, 100%. One that happened at your house.
Oh, yeah.
And I thought, there were like some black lights involved.
Yes.
So I thought I would wear this, and might as well just make it a regular part of my wardrobe.
Might as well, yeah. People might think you escaped from somewhere, though.
That's fine, as long as they don't think I'm a Tennessee fan. I'm cool with it.
Oh, we should do a blacklight episode of the podcast.
Ooh,
sometime.
that would be really
that'd be
fun
great
to watch.
on video.
Well, with enough accessories, it'd be like the rave episode.
Ooh, we could just use those masks.
Yeah, we've got some blacklight masks.
1000th episode.
Okay.
Keep that in mind.
We'll plan for it.
Remind me in 5 years.
Okay. 5 years would not even be close.
Yeah, you're right. More like 10.
Kyle, there were supposed to be basketball games this past week, and there weren't basketball games.
Yeah, I know. They got postponed.
COVID canceled.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hopefully we get to make those up.
Yeah. Cancel culture.
They were supposed to play LSU and Vanderbilt. Kyle was
two easy wins.
Yeah. Kyle was really confident about those two games. Me a little bit less so in the first one. Hopefully we get to make those up later. They do get to, hopefully, fingers crossed, we're back in business playing Texas A&M on Saturday. Before we get to a little preview of that game, we've got a few news items to talk about, a few little fun little topics to discuss. One news item, football related, Mr. Tyson Ford, St. Louis area recruit at defensive end for the class of 2022, is announcing his college decision on Monday, and he previously posted his top 4 of Mizzou, Georgia, Oklahoma, and Notre Dame. You think he's picking Missouri?
Probably not, but you never know. I think that he will pick Oklahoma, but just keep in mind, he's a 2022 recruit, long way to go on that one, and Lincoln Riley, who knows where he's going to be a year from now.
Hopefully in the NFL.
I think he very well could make the jump to the NFL, which means their defensive coordinator would not be there most likely either.
Get them all out of there.
Get them out of there. Just clean them all out. And Missouri also does not have a defensive coordinator. I'm hunting for one currently, but haven't found anybody. But, I mean, I do actually think that that's potentially a detriment to Missouri's chances, considering he's going to make an announcement without knowing who a defensive coordinator is going to be. But stranger things have happened.
Yeah, actually, thinking through everything you just said, I hope he picks Oklahoma, and then I hope all the coaches leave and he has to rethink his decision.
You just love the kids getting screwed over, don't you?
Well, okay, now that I think about it from that perspective, I only want what's best for the young man. And
that probably is playing for Mizzou, right?
Exactly.
There you go.
All right, so Kyle's got him going to Oklahoma. That makes sense to me. Okay, speaking of defensive coordinator, we still don't know who's coming in, and we've had a little bit more time to think about this than we did the head coaching search last year. So we've got a second week now of coaching search, and I really wanted to ask you, Kyle. I was thinking through some of the defensive coordinators that we've had recently. Obviously, Ryan Walters, Barry Odom before him, and Dave Steckel for a really long time. And those different defensive coordinators and the different position coaches on the defensive side have had slightly different philosophies from time to time. And I'm just wondering, what sort of defensive philosophy or style do you think is most fun to watch for a Mizzou football team, and maybe also which one, it may not be the same thing, would you think would be most successful at Missouri with the roster as it's constructed right now?
Well, I'm probably a little biased because my first instinct is to think about the let's meet at the quarterback kind of days, where Missouri's main focus on defense was to sack the quarterback, to put pressure on the quarterback. That was really fun to watch.
Tackle the ball carrier on the way to the quarterback.
Correct. And I'm not sure that works everywhere and all the time, but Missouri had the horses, if you will, at the time to be able to do that successfully back in 2013-14 era. Obviously, you know all the guys that were there at that point. And so they were able to do that really well, and that was really fun to watch, and they were incredibly good at that time. So I think I would love to see them get back to that. I'm not sure they have the personnel to do it as well as they used to be able to do it. Give me Jeff Coat with another year in the offseason. Give me a 16th year Chris Turner. Like maybe we can pressure the quarterback. I think we were able to do it fairly well at times this year. But I guess I would just like to see a little bit of continuity on the defensive line since we have a lot of guys coming back. It seems weird to say that we might try and make this a strength is the defensive line, because in the last few years it has not been.
It used to be.
D-line
zoo was a thing, but then it kind of fell out of favor when the defensive line was just nowhere to be found for a few seasons. They had interior guys, but that's not as flashy and doesn't make the highlights quite as much when interior guys are just stopping the run really well.
Right.
Like Terry Beckner and other guys like that, Jordan Elliott.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I totally agree with you. Getting an edge rush that gets to the quarterback, seeing Jeff Coat this past season maybe piqued my interest in getting back towards that style of defense. One thing that I'm afraid that we might lose is that advantage in the secondary. That's, I think, really Coach was and still is Coach Walter's strength, was coaching up the secondary. And obviously the safeties were a bright spot on Missouri's defense the last couple seasons. And, man, it just seems like, especially in the college game, you just can't get it all most of the time. There's going to be a weak spot somewhere, just depending on what position group is a little younger or doesn't quite have as much depth. And it seems like when Missouri has been successful, they've kind of had this bend but don't break style where they're just not giving up big plays. I think when Mizzou's defense was legitimately bad, they were just getting gashed for big plays over and over again. And that's not to say that, everybody will remember the Auburn SEC championship game where we just got ran all over, and that was the worst
possible matchup.
Yeah, for that bend but don't break style where they were just, gashing us for 10, 12, 15-yard rushes constantly. So it may not be the most flashy or popular with the fans, but that's maybe kind of what I'm looking for is, and a lot of what Missouri's been successful with the last few seasons is excellent red zone defense, good. Last year, Missouri was excellent on third downs, which is something that they've struggled with in previous seasons. So maybe a little bit of continuity would help with that.
Yeah, if you project out the defense and what we think will be a strength personnel-wise for them a year or two down the road, I think that you can say defensive line has a chance to be that, and I think that cornerback has a chance to be that. And so, and just the way that the game's going, I think just everybody wants to pass. That's the focus for most teams right now, and probably will be in the next few years. I think you put pressure on the quarterback, and you hope your cornerbacks can cover, and just see what happens. I think those will be our two strengths. Hopefully, that whoever's coming in can use those two positions to their advantage.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting that easily a strength for Missouri the last couple seasons has been linebacker, obviously from Nick Bolton and Cale Garrett. And there's not really that guy that looks ready to step up and fill their shoes, even 75% of their shoes.
Right.
So maybe there won't be a star at linebacker, but if you can have a few guys that are solid, then you won't have to worry too much. Kyle, I saw you posed a question on Twitter about Mizzou football wide receivers from the recent years. And what did that just stem from a piece of artwork that the Mizzou football account tweeted out?
Yeah, it was actually LaDainian Washington, I believe.
Yeah.
And they actually just offered a wide receiver prospect from LaDainian Washington's high school, I believe, that he went to. His first name is The Coldest. Did you see that?
No,
on
I
Twitter?
didn't.
His name is literally The Coldest,
Gotta
which
have
is the
him.
greatest name
Yeah.
in the world. I can't even remember his last name because it doesn't matter.
Nope.
But I have to wonder if that was a little bit of a, like, hey, look at our success with wide receivers. And so LaDainian Washington put that out there. And, I just was like, well, there's a lot of talent on here. And I think honestly, we got a lot of the same two people when Jeremy Macklin and Denario Alexander. But
yeah, you said if you could have 3 of these guys, who are you choosing? And just to run down the list real quick for people that didn't see the tweet, we've got Jonathan Johnson, Justin Gage, TJ Moe, Marcus Lucas, LaDainian Washington, Emmanuel Hall, Will Franklin, Bud Sasser, Jamon Moore, Jeremy Macklin, and Denario Alexander.
And obviously those two guys there at the end, Jeremy Macklin, Denario Alexander, it's pretty hard to pass up on either one of those guys. But I think having to pick 3 created a little bit of creativity for other people, and there was a lot of other names for that third wide receiver.
Denario Alexander had one of the best seasons of any wide receiver in college football history.
Yeah.
And Jeremy Macklin is one of the best athletes to ever put on a Mizzou uniform.
Oh, for sure.
So those are pretty easy for 1-2. And then there's probably, obviously any of these guys would be fine in the third spot if you're kind of rounding out a trio. If you're looking at, I was kind of thinking of it like on-field success. Like if I could plug these guys into the starting lineup next season, who would I want? Mm-hmm. And I honestly think that Jamon Moore would be an excellent third guy to complement these other 2.
I agree with you.
And that may
virtually
not be,
nobody said Jamon Moore.
Yeah, that's probably not a popular pick.
We probably got almost 50 responses, and I'm not sure a single person said Jamon Moore.
And I think part of that is maybe, he was the number 1 guy his last 2 seasons at Missouri, and he had the physical abilities to do it. He just would not, he was unclutch in moments where they really needed him to come up with a big play. But he had a couple clutch moments as well. It was just, anytime you have a big drop in a big spot, people are going to remember that. And that kind of plagued him and Jonathan Johnson both for their off and on for their whole careers. But if you're looking at him as like a third option or like a 2A or a 1C, I guess you could say, in an offense, I think he would be perfect in that role.
Yeah, he was very well-rounded and was, yeah. I also thought about Emmanuel Hall. If he's healthy, he's pretty much unstoppable, especially with Drew Lock, a guy who likes to throw deep every pass he possibly can. That was a really fun combo to watch.
I was also thinking about these receivers that were on the field at the same time in their actual Mizzou careers. So, there was a time where LaDainian Washington, Marcus Lucas, and Bud Sasser were all on the field at the same time. And another guy that's not on this beautiful graphic is Dorial Green-Beckham, and he was also a part of that receiving corps.
Yeah.
And I think he deserves to be on this graphic.
I had more people say DGB than Jamon Moore.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
And
he's not even on the thing.
He didn't end his career at Missouri, even though he never played a game for Oklahoma. He technically transferred to Oklahoma before going to the draft. So maybe that's why he was left off this list. But
I would say the third most common answer was probably Justin Gage that we got on that.
A little bit before our time, but I remember him being noteworthy just for playing football and basketball at Mizzou. I thought I had something else to say, but I don't know. I'm still stuck on DGB. That's one of the biggest what ifs in Mizzou history.
I can still remember where I was when he committed to Missouri.
Oh yeah, me too.
In chemistry class.
In
high school.
That would have been your senior year of high school?
Yeah.
Okay, so I was a freshman at Missouri State, and I was driving to class and was listening to it on the radio, I think, like on ESPN radio.
Mm-hmm.
They were broadcasting it.
Yeah, I think I've probably told that story before, but I actually was not only the same age as DGB, but we were both went to Springfield High School, so we played against each other in football and stuff growing up or whatever. So it was the most painful tackle I ever had to make in middle school because he was playing wide receiver at the time and had like an end around, and I was playing defensive end, and he hit me first and took about 10. It took half the team to get him down, like on every play.
It's the most painful tackle I never made.
So if I'm going to choose, I'm probably going to choose Jamon Moore for that third spot.
I'll go with Emmanuel Hall, but I like the pick.
I'll go with Bud Sasser.
Oh, yeah.
Ooh.
I'd pick him for
yeah.
my team.
Yeah. Would you pick him for your church league basketball team?
Probably.
Have we told that story on the air yet?
Who
Yeah.
knows?
Probably. I don't know.
We'll circle back around to that eventually. All right, Kyle. Let's. Do you want to talk about that national championship that happened?
Yeah, let's talk about it. Alabama won for the 14th time in the last 15 years.
I don't think it's quite that much.
No, I really do think they've got to be one of the best offenses like ever, maybe.
And coming
In
back
college
to back
basketball.
off of last
College
season's
basketball, college
LSU team,
Yeah.
like that's a huge debate
Oh,
right
yeah.
now. It's like, last year's LSU, this year's Alabama. I mean, that'd been an incredible game to watch.
They really would be.
But another thing, something I was going to say about that Mizzou graphic with all the wide receivers and the ones that all played on the same team is I was seeing some photos of recent Alabama teams and like the position groups on those teams. So like there was one photo that showed, first of all, I didn't know that Alvin Kamara originally committed to Alabama and then transferred to Tennessee. So there was a photo that showed TJ Yeldon, Kenyon Drake, Alvin Kamara, and Derrick Henry.
Mm-hmm.
They were all in an Alabama uniform at the same time at a practice. That's insane.
That's wild.
And then there was another one of wide receivers that was obviously Devonta Smith, Jalen Waddle, the two, Jerry Jeudy, and Henry Ruggs.
Yes. Nice job.
It's
ridiculous.
That's 4 first-round wide receivers.
Why was Jalen Waddle playing in this game?
That was weird.
I mean, he will be respected for that,
Yeah.
and that's fine. I mean, I in this generation of college football, I guess I don't want to criticize a guy for wanting to put on for his team whenever he's
And
probably
I guess
not 100%.
he knows his body and he's communicating with the trainers and stuff.
Sure.
Nick Saban.
They didn't need him, that's for sure.
Yeah, Nick Saban is a hard-nosed coach, but I mean, if his trainers and the player were telling him, he's not good to go. I mean, he wasn't good to go in the SEC championship or the semifinal game. So, but that was weird seeing him out there and like how he would slow down.
Mm-hmm.
Like on that one catch that he had on the big third down early in the game. It was just like, okay, this guy should probably not be playing if he's coming up with a limp.
Yeah,
afterwards.
he was like limping off the field all the time and stuff. Honestly, like, this is crazy that this might be a hot take just because of how good Devonta Smith was, but I thought Jalen Waddle was even better than Devonta Smith early in the season. Like, they're both
Heisman Trophy winner.
Yeah, exactly. They're both easily, of course, NFL caliber wide receivers. I think they'll both make an impact on whatever team they're on next year. They're both supremely talented, but I just didn't think that Jalen Waddle needed to play in this game. But good for him for getting out there.
There was lots of players for Alabama that didn't need to play in this game, honestly.
Yeah,
they kind of steamrolled Ohio State.
Would they have done that to Clemson?
Probably.
I was surprised about Ohio State easily beating Clemson. That was shocking to me. I mean, obviously we know how good Ohio State is. They're great. But I just did not see Clemson getting steamrolled like that.
Yeah. Smith, though, in this national championship, in the first half, did he even play a snap in the second half?
I'm not sure.
Well, in the first half alone, he had 12 catches, 215 yards, and 3 touchdowns.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah. I mean, there was lots of comments on Twitter talking about how Alabama was playing on freshman difficulty, and had adjusted the sliders or something.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, that's what it felt like. And Justin Fields is probably going to be a top 3 or 4 pick in the draft too.
Yeah.
Depending on what order we have. But, yeah, just a lot of talent playing in that game. But Alabama is just truly something else.
Yeah, you can see how Mizzou's just a couple pieces, a couple years away from competing at that level.
Pieces, yeah. Well, Mizzou put up a decent fight against Alabama in the standards of this season. They held them to what, 38 points. I'm sure Alabama kind of slowed down. Was
that the first game of the season?
It was.
And it feels like 3 years ago.
Yeah, I just remember Mizzou's defense was ready to go in that game. It came out. They were hitting hard.
Mm-hmm.
I remember Tyreek Gillespie especially. Kind of made a name for himself a little bit in that first game.
So I'm ready to admit freezing cold take here in this episode. Okay. I said in the Alabama preview that I thought that Bryce Young was going to take over the starting job from Mac Jones, and that Alabama would be better for it, and that they would sail off into the sunset with their new freshman quarterback. But boy, was I wrong.
That's almost one of those situations where how do you even, from a scouting perspective, how do you even scout Mac Jones? Because his wide receivers are so good.
Like from NFL scout perspective? Yeah.
Like how do you even know? Do you even know how good this guy is? I mean, what would Connor Bazelak look like? And just literally switch out Mac Jones for Connor Bazelak. What does it look like?
I mean, yeah, put anybody back there.
You don't know. You have no idea how good he truly is with that team around him.
I'd like to think that. I mean, Taylor Powell. Stick him back there. I mean,
could they run the table with Taylor Powell?
Probably. I mean,
Najee Harris is
best offensive line in college football.
Yeah, that would actually be an incredible experiment.
That would be. I mean,
that will never happen.
Yeah, Mac Jones won whatever award is best quarterback. Smith won the Heisman and Biletnikoff. Harris won best running back.
And they played most of the year without Waddle, who I thought was just as good as any of those guys.
And they went undefeated in a SEC-only schedule.
Yeah. Unbelievable.
Yeah. Mizzou's right there, though.
They're
close.
Just one piece away. I do want to express how badly I wish we had an 8-team playoff. And because I just think that would be so fun. And if we did have 8 teams in the playoff, it would have obviously been Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, and Notre Dame would have been the top 4. But then we would have added Texas A&M, Oklahoma, Florida, and Cincinnati, assuming I guess that's what the final rankings were. And I guess why I think it would be so fun is just the opportunity and of some of those teams getting a chance to play in a do-or-die situation. And is Cincinnati going to beat Alabama in the 1 versus 8 game? No, of course not. But it's still but if you compare it to March Madness, we know 70% or more of the teams in March Madness have 0% chance of winning that tournament. And I think it's just fun to get good teams that want to play and want the opportunity to play against a bigger school. Just get them all in that tournament and see what happens. And you just never know. There's things you could never predict in a million years that happen in that tournament. And honestly, I just like the beginning rounds. I think that's what's the most fun part of March Madness. I love just those first couple of rounds whenever there's all kinds of teams and personalities and storylines. Yeah. And honestly, the longer the tournament goes on, the less I care.
Right.
Unless Mizzou's in it or something. I don't really care who won the championship. Yeah. And I couldn't even tell you who won March Madness probably 3 seasons ago.
Those first 2 weekends, or how does it usually work?
The first 4 days. It's like a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Yes.
Yeah. That's the best 4 days ever.
Yeah.
With all those games, all those teams playing, and I see you looking over at them. And
best time of the year.
Oh, yeah.
You guys just eat that up. Absolutely love it. Anyways.
Best 4 days of the year.
Anyways.
Besides football season.
Yeah. And Christmas. Go ahead.
And when football and basketball overlap.
Anyways, okay, so I just want to see more teams in this thing, give more teams an opportunity to play, more teams on the big stage. Georgia literally is not even in this thing, so there's still a lot of really good teams that still aren't even making the cut in the top 8. I don't care who wins the championship. Alabama's going to win it no matter what, no matter how many teams are in this thing, no matter if there's 4 teams or 48, Alabama's going to win. Might as well get some other fun games in there and just see what happens.
Yeah, I guess my question to you with that would be, isn't that basically what we get with bowl season in general? The team just doesn't have the opportunity to keep on playing.
I would argue no, because in bowl games, that's it no matter what. And I think that, and this is kind of a popular meme online, I feel like at this point, is like, but I really do think the motivation like of the team is a legitimate thing. Is a legitimate thing in play with those bowl games, especially those teams that didn't make the playoff. Like, why are we here? You know, like this game means nothing. If we win or lose, we're either 5th place or 6th place. It's a consolation game. I don't care. But if they're in the playoff and they win their matchup, they're moving on, and you have no idea what can happen. And I just think Cincinnati deserves to be rewarded for a season that they did not lose a game. Yeah. And there's somebody every year that goes undefeated, and they deserve to have a shot at something that means something.
Yeah, I like that point a lot. It's a shame that a program can have the best season in their program's history and one that they're not likely to ever replicate, and the best they get is a bowl matchup with an SEC team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just this like... that kind of brings out that kind of slimy corporate side of the sport that nobody likes. It's just like, well, Ohio State only played 6 games, but yet we still put them in. And obviously they were justified. They should have been there. But it's just they got in on brand name. And if anybody else did that, they would have never been considered. And I just think that Cincinnati played like 5 more games than Ohio State did and won all of them. And I think they deserve a chance to play in a meaningful game.
I wonder who is holding back the college football playoff from expanding to 8 teams, because it seems like that would be in ESPN's best interest to,
more TV money.
Yeah,
I have no idea, and it seems like there's no discussion about it whatsoever.
Yeah, I mean, other than just like this, like people wishing, but yeah, it doesn't seem like there's any traction at the higher level for it.
Doesn't seem like it.
Yeah, I think going into this, I would have thought, well, it doesn't matter, Alabama's going to win anyway, but I like the idea of, I mean, if you are thinking about a team like Missouri, I guess if they go undefeated, they're going to be in because they're coming from the SEC, so they wouldn't have to worry about it. But yeah, it would be nice to have a little bit more guarantee that if Missouri has one of the best seasons they've ever had, that they could at least have a shot.
Yeah, I mean, they're most likely going to have to beat Alabama to get into a 14 playoff in the SEC championship game. And unless there's just really crazy circumstances with the rest of the teams.
Yeah.
But in an 18 playoff, Missouri has way a better shot to make that in the future. And
obviously I'm a SEC homer, but I think there's plenty of times where the loser of the SEC championship game is still worthy of a spot in the playoff.
Mm-hmm.
And
that actually happened a few years ago, and they ended up
Alabama and Georgia both.
And they played in the championship game.
In the BCS days, LSU and Alabama played in the SEC championship game, and then like 2 weeks later played in the national championship.
Mm-hmm.
So there's hope for Missouri. There's hope. They're just a few pieces away. They'll get there. Is that all we have before we talk about basketball? Yes, sir.
I got a little surprise for you boys today.
Oh, goodness.
Let's go.
A few weeks ago, we ended a thing we like to call SEC Pick'em plus Nebraska. We never really do anything for it, but this time I thought we might.
Oh, of course, when Kyle wins.
Well, don't worry.
Okay.
Don't worry. Took longer to get it than I thought, but...
Drum roll. Oh, my goodness.
Let me introduce to you the trophy for the Missouri Sports Podcast SEC Pick'em plus Nebraska champion.
Wow.
That is amazing.
You'll see here we have plenty of room to add over the years.
That's fantastic.
We also have the previous 2 winners.
Okay.
Congratulations.
Back to back.
Yes.
And each one has a little extra thing on the name.
Oh my goodness, it's heavy duty.
Oh yeah, that's
that
good
is
stuff right there. You could chuck that thing a mile.
Oh yeah. That's amazing. Got our logo on there and everything.
Oh,
that's
yeah.
absolutely beautiful.
So I also thought we needed a little something extra to spice up the room.
Little traveling trophy that stays here.
Oh,
Yeah.
That's amazing. That'll sit on the desk.
Oh, yeah.
It'll look real nice, front and center.
Kyle Armageddon DeVries. That's absolutely fantastic.
Love it. Anyway.
Wow, great job.
Great job.
So, there you boys go. Also, I want it next year.
Oh, okay.
Gotta get my name on that bad boy.
Yeah. You probably want reimbursed for 2/3 of the cost of that too, huh?
We'll talk about it.
It's a tax write-off.
Yeah. All right, now we're going to talk about some basketball. Missouri didn't get two automatic wins, according to Kyle, this past week, but they got a really good opportunity against Texas A&M. Now, before we get real deep into that Texas A&M preview, I want to just take a look at the SEC landscape. We actually left off the previous episode doing this, and then a bunch of teams played 2 games and Missouri didn't. So I want to see if we learned anything while Missouri was sitting on the sidelines or sitting at home. And one thing that I think we learned is Alabama is super legit.
At basketball.
Yeah.
This is an Alabama episode.
Yeah,
for Alabama fans now.
Alabama. Yes. We knew this day was going to come. Eventually, everybody becomes an Alabama fan. So they are 5-0 in SEC play. Kentucky was getting a little hot.
Yeah, they won
SEC
their first
play.
few games.
And then Alabama said, nope, you're not as good as us. They put the hammer down.
Yeah, they did.
Just beat them by 20 last night.
Mm-hmm.
And Alabama is all the way up to number 20 in KenPom, 19th on offense, 28th on defense. That's like, for both of those ratings to be top 30, that's legit. You're a really, really good team.
I think Nate Oates is a really legit coach, too. He is doing some great things there.
A couple things about Alabama. They shoot a lot of three-pointers, and they make a lot of three-pointers. They make 33%, which is actually around average, but they've been a little bit hotter than that in conference play. And they are 30th in the country as far as number of three-pointers attempted compared to overall field goals attempted. And they've got a kid named Herbert Jones. You may have heard of him. He's a senior. He's been there a while. Who's shooting 53% from 3. And they've got a smattering of other guys that are shooting high 30%. So they are not afraid to pull the trigger, and their offense has really been cooking lately.
I don't really know what Alabama did in the non-conference, to be honest, but they've just kind of blew up in the last few weeks.
They were fine. Their only losses were all to top 100 teams, so no real glaring bad losses. But yeah, they absolutely look legit. Okay, another thing we need to talk about is South Carolina. They've had COVID issues and have had trouble with getting games played. They've only played 5 games.
That's crazy.
They've played 2 SEC games. Only 1 SEC game against Texas A&M. So when you look at the standings, it's super goofy because Alabama's 5-0 in conference play and South Carolina is 1-0.
Alabama's second place.
Yeah, Alabama's played 13 games and South Carolina has played 5. And now with Missouri missing 2 games, Vanderbilt, the game that they were supposed to play in place of Missouri, that got postponed as well, I believe. So we're kind of, I don't know, me personally, I'm getting a little nervous about how the season is going. And the SEC has been excellent. They got almost every football game in. Yeah. All the games they needed to get in, they did. There was a couple late that just didn't really matter that much, so they just said, forget about it. Mm-hmm. But
I do think that they need to try and get all these games in somehow, and that's the beautiful thing about basketball is you can play multiple games in like back-to-back days if you have to. You don't have to wait till next Saturday to get it one game in, and then like football is. So I definitely think that I'm less worried about basketball season as far as like making up these games, but we really have to make sure the COVID issues don't keep popping up.
Yeah, I think right now the plan is, and I don't think I've heard anything official, but I think what is assumed is they'll just tack these games on to the end of the season because there's a gap between the end of the season and the SEC tournament. But if very many more games get postponed, then they are going to have to start squeezing them in there somewhere.
Yeah, I'm not too worried about it at this point, but we'll see what we're saying a month from now.
So then taking a peek at the bottom of the standings, we have Auburn, which is kind of surprising, at 0-4 in conference play. And so their opponents that they played are Arkansas, Texas A&M, Ole Miss, and Alabama. So that's a legitimately, I don't know if you can call it a bad loss when it's on the road to, a team just outside the top 100 in Texas A&M, but it's not one that's going to help your cause at all. So they're 0-4, and Vanderbilt is 0-3, and Georgia is 0-3.
Yeah, I thought Georgia was going to be a little bit better, and obviously we're super early into the season, but I'm a little bit surprised that they are winless still in the SEC slate.
So then looking back at Missouri, obviously other teams now have played a few more games than them, but Missouri still sits at 13th in the conference in offensive efficiency, and they sit at 6th in defensive efficiency. Honestly, that's right where they have been the last few seasons. So they're definitely going to have to pick up the pace on offense in order to win the number of conference games that we hope they'll win, and kind of solidify their case for protected seed in the NCAA tournament.
Mm-hmm.
But they can start that off right away with this matchup against Texas A&M. It is on the road in College Station. But if you look at Texas A&M, they've got some players that you've heard of, like Savion Flagg, J.J. Chandler. And so they've got some guys that have been around the block, played in a lot of SEC games. They are the only team worse than Missouri in conference play on offense, so that's good. Hopefully Missouri can kind of put the clamps on them and hold them to a really low output scoring. They're also really slow-paced, so I think we could be in for an ugly game. We thought that the Mississippi State game was going to be ugly, and it eventually got there, but it started out beautiful. I don't want to dwell too much on that, but
right.
I think this is more of a guarantee to be the slugfest on offense that we expected the Mississippi State game to be.
Yeah, I think Missouri's going to try and push the tempo. I would hope they try and take control of tempo in that way. But I do think that points may be a premium in this one, that's for sure. And A&M really can struggle on offense too, so we may see kind of a low-scoring slugfest. But
yeah, Missouri's 6th in the SEC in tempo on offense this year. So, and we saw it against like Arkansas. They wanted to push the pace and get out in transition. We've seen that in pretty much every game this season, especially off of misses.
I think they've been a lot better when they're playing up and playing quickly, and they're going to turn the ball over no matter what. I feel like I just think that's something they're just going to they've shown the last few years they're prone to turn the ball over. Might as well try and get more possessions in.
So a few factors that we always like to take a look at with Missouri's opponents. I'm trying to figure out Texas A&M's defense. They're kind of strange in that they have a lot of high spots and low spots. So teams shoot really well against them. Their effective field goal percentage is, near 250 in the country as far as their defense. But they're the 14th best at causing turnovers. So that's not something we like to see from a Missouri opponent. They also don't send teams to the free throw line very much, and they do generate a lot of steals. So that's an area that kind of troubles me and just reinforces the idea in my mind that this is going to be an ugly defensive struggle. And I don't know. I am scared of what this might mean for Missouri's turnover numbers.
Yeah, if Missouri's going to figure out how to shoot the three ball, this might be a good game to do that in, because I don't think they're going to get to the line much. It's not as much as they'd like to be. So, Mark Smith, if you're listening, we would love you to do one of your famous 5 or 6 3-point makes in this game, please.
Speaking of not being able to get to the free throw line, Drew Smith, he has struggled a little bit, especially in that area. In 3 SEC games, he is 2 for 2 from the free throw line. He's only attempted 2 free throws. And I don't really know what's going on there? He was 2 for 2 against Tennessee and then hasn't shot a free throw in the last 2 games against Arkansas and Mississippi State.
Yeah, I think last year he really had to kind of take over games sometimes and had to be the one to score inside. And I hope this trend continues, but we've been getting the ball to Tillman a lot more on the inside, and I think that's kind of alleviated Drew Smith having to create his own shot inside, which he can do. But I think getting the ball and kind of running the offense through Tillman has been much better for the offense. But I think that has kind of limited opportunities for Drew to get in the lane and get fouled. But I would really like to see Drew be more assertive on offense and try and get to the line, because that's just free points whenever he's getting fouled.
Yeah, it's definitely turned into sort of the Pinson-Tillman show at times, which that's great. When it's working, it has been fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
It makes it even more confusing what happened in the second half of the Mississippi State game, because that combination seemed effortless. I mean, they were scoring at will at times in that one, so it just is even more head-scratching that it all came to a halt there after halftime.
I hate that was the last game that we've seen them play, because it's just such a strange taste in our mouths, and then we don't get to see them play for like 2 weeks. It's painful.
Yeah. I'm just looking over Texas A&M's advanced metrics here. They are actually the only team in the SEC that in SEC play has turned the ball over more than Missouri.
Really?
Yeah, and quite a bit more. They're 14th by a lot, and they're also 13th in effective field goal percentage offense, and their overall offensive efficiency is considerably worse than Missouri's for Missouri only being 1 spot ahead of them. They've just really struggled to put it in the basket during conference play.
Yeah. Missouri really needs to bounce back in this one, like big time. Just coming off that really strange and terrible second half at Mississippi State, playing against a team that's not even in the top 100 of KenPom, a team that can't score. But I'm worried about this matchup. I'm worried about how they match up against A&M. Kind of like you said, I'm worried about the turnovers. I'm worried about not getting to the line, and I'm worried about just the lack of possessions in this game. I think could just if we hit a dry spell, it could be really ugly. I hate to do this, but I think Mizzou's going to lose this game on the road against A&M. This is like Mississippi State. A&M has kind of been a house of horrors for Mizzou historically in the last, in the SEC at least. And I think Texas A&M squeaks out a close one, 65-63.
That would not be good.
That would be bad.
You had Missouri beating LSU at home.
Yeah.
Man, I cannot bring myself to predict a loss in this game. I think Missouri will get it together. I think they will have learned, I hope and pray they have learned something from that second half of Mississippi State. And even though they're playing, a maroon and white Adidas school again, I hope that doesn't just give them flashbacks and
yeah,
are we in Starkville?
Yeah, I hope they're just excited to be playing again and are just feeling good and feeling that chemistry that we've seen. And I hope they're excited and they're energized.
I'm looking back at Texas A&M's win against Auburn. It was a 2-point win, and Auburn was the home team in that game. That was at the beginning of conference play when every home team was losing. And Auburn went to the free throw line 9 times in that game. And they turned the ball over on a quarter of their possessions.
That's frustrating to watch.
Yeah. And Texas A&M only went to the line 11 times, and they turned the ball over on 27% of their possessions. So, I mean, that has the makings of a make your eyes bleed game.
Got to have a 5-steal game for Drew Smith here.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like there'll be steals to go around.
Yeah.
There'll steals to be had in this one.
Well, I mean, that maybe how they have to score is in transition in this game. Because trying to run the offensive set against A&M, I don't know.
I'm going to say Okay, here's another interesting stat. Texas A&M, their 2 most recent games, obviously they play Mississippi State tonight, so can't factor that in. But against South Carolina and Tennessee, Texas A&M scored a whopping 54 points in each of those games. So obviously that will lead your metrics to be completely in the hole. I'm going to say Missouri wins this one 71-64. They got to bounce back.
I feel like Savion Flagg's a Mizzou killer, man.
It does seem like that, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I was trying to look back. He hasn't never, like, unless I have to go back several years, he has never, like, blown up.
Right.
But he's had
Just
a couple
pesky.
he's had a couple of those clutch plays in games that Mizzou should have won, and then Texas A&M just kind of snuck out with a win. And I feel like he had like a block and then a fast break layup on one in one of those games that kind of iced it. Yeah,
he's got that little runner in the lane. He's good at that.
And he's been at Texas A&M for 8 years. You know, he's a senior, so just like
he's pulling a Larry Roundtree.
Yeah, exactly.
Pulling a Kevin Purrier.
Jordan Geist. Yeah, it's like pestering everyone for a long time. But I think Missouri can pull this one off. I think they really need to.
Yeah, they do.
They missed an opportunity to get 1 or 2 wins due to COVID. Hopefully we get those back later. I need to look. I didn't really look at Missouri's following game to see when it. They do play again on Tuesday against South Carolina, another team that's kind of been on the rise lately.
Yeah. Better get that game in before South Carolina has COVID issues again.
Right, exactly. But yeah, South Carolina only played 5 games this season. One of those was a win against Texas A&M. So I don't know what kind of analysis you could possibly do with South Carolina. I mean, actually, they do have a mutual opponent with Missouri. They beat Liberty a little bit easier than Missouri did. They won that one 78-62, so they at least put up more points. I think this is a slightly different style of team from Frank Martin than we're used to seeing. They're still really good on defense, but they just haven't played enough games to know what they really are as a team. So
I think they're still going to play that pesky defense where they just foul you constantly, and the refs can't call a foul every single play, so they just don't.
I mean, that's like the worst thing in basketball to me. So I just hope that we don't have to deal with that. That's unbearable to watch.
Yeah. Well, if they are like that, hopefully the refs are calling it.
Yeah, I don't mind if a team does that. You just got to call the fouls.
Yeah.
And that's the problem is that refs just.
I don't care how ugly the game.
Really
I don't care how ugly the game is. Whenever we're rooting for a team that needs to get to the free throw line to win close games, especially I don't care if it's ugly.
Their wins aren't going to be pretty. If that's how they need to win,
I just want to win.
Be pretty. Yeah. South Carolina plays LSU on Saturday, so maybe keep an eye on that one if you want to learn a little bit more about them. Their last game was on January 6th, so they've had a little layoff just like Missouri did. So I'm predicting a win against Texas A&M. I don't know. I can't predict really against South Carolina, but I'm going to say they win that one too. Something like 73-68. That's almost probably exactly what I picked. No, it's a little higher scoring then.
Yeah, I think the offense is going to come out for this one more so than the A&M game. I think Mizzou wins 82-74. High scoring affair.
Okay, that's going out on a little limb. I think maybe we have to return to that pick.
Okay.
I just hope we get 2 wins. We need them.
Yep. Teams that Missouri should be beating at home or away.
Yeah, but yeah, South Carolina is number 59 in KenPom, but their rating is going to fluctuate wildly because they just haven't played very many games.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Quick episode.
Yeah. Well, that's what happens when you are missing 2 games that should have happened.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that all you got for them this week?
That's what I got for the folks.
All right.
All right. Well, you can find us on Spotify, Google Podcast, Apple Podcasts. We're on Twitter and Instagram at Mizzou Sports Pod. You can email us at MissouriSportsPod@gmail.com.
You can find our t-shirts and stickers on our online shop, MissouriSportsPod.BigCartel.com.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. We will see you next week.